is going on, everybody? It's Matty Kiwoom from South Harmon Fantasy Football. Welcome to the Week 8 episode of The Game Plan. Today, we are going to go through some rankings breakdown. I have a little surprise, a little new format, if you will, in terms of the presentation. Just went down to France, so I got that little bit of. I just went down to Louisiana, got that little French in my that accent in me, that Cajun in me after a week down at Lafayette in New Orleans and Belchase. Anyway, we're going to talk about rankings. We, of course, are going to hit this week in WoRP. I got 3 takes that I formulated after looking at the WoRP charts over at southharmonff.com. And then, of course, we're going to finish it with the Kiwoom call of the week. But first, if you got to keep it tight, you're trying to keep it manscaped, you're trying to clean it up like your boy here, you head over to manscaped.com. Use the promo code SHFF20. Get yourself 20% off your entire order and free shipping. That's right, folks. Use that promo code SHFF20 at checkout and get 20% off of manscaped.com. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, not only am I giving you some awesome promo codes, again, that's SHFF20 at manscaped.com, no matter what you're getting, the lawnmower, the weed whacker, the bombs, everything, 20% off. But of course, if you have lineups, questions, starter sit, discussions, decisions to make for your fantasy lineup this week, of course, leave them in the chat. And we'll get to that as well. I see some familiar faces. I want to give a big shout out to Dynasty Barry. What is good? My man, Rob the Harry Snowman. Good morning to you, my friend. Fizzle Dollars in the chat. You, my man, Fizz. What's going on, my brother? Cold World's in the chat. Let's get it. Oh, speaking of let's get it, T-Rock is in the building. Let's get it. All right, so we got a great show today. So I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's get into it. Let's get ready to game plan for week 8. So before we get into the rankings, of course, what we have to do is I'm going to give you a quick little breakdown of some of the ineligibles, the decisions, who's going to play, who's expected to play, all that good stuff. Get you primed and ready as you game plan for week 8. And then, of course, head back to the channel at 12 Eastern Standard Time. We have a great episode of Start or Shit this week. Trooper is going to come on and talk about WoRP. And, of course, Eric Vanek, T-Rock, giving you all that you need to make the best lineup decisions for this week and get those dubs. And then I got to say it. You got to come back this week, tonight, at 7 Eastern Time, 7:15 Eastern Time, back to the channel for the Sunday recap show. We have a very special episode planned today. It's going to be an absolute banger. Now, let's get into some of the reports that have surfaced overnight and this morning. DK Metcalf will try to do some work, but he remains doubtful. Looks like he will be out this week. I'm going to talk about one of his teammates here when I get to the rankings discussions. T. Higgins is, quote, feeling better after he had a quad injury pop up after Friday's practice. You hate to see that, especially a guy like this. It's like, this is your season, brother, to get it done and make sure you get that big contract. And it just, he was hurt with his calf and now he's hurt with the quad. We like to see him get healthy. Travis Etienne is a long shot to play, so we are firing up Tank Bigsby. He is a top 20 running back this week. Teams are eyeing Christian Kirk ahead of the trade deadline as well as Deontay Johnson. Well, I will say this. So far, the wide receiver trades have been absolute bangers for fantasy football. I'd like to keep that train going, so let's do that, NFL. It looks like George Kittle will play. He's expected to play tonight. In a not-so-surprising turn of events, but a good secret nonetheless, the Washington Commanders were keeping it pretty close to the chest regarding Jaden Daniels, but it looks like the signs are pointing to him playing this week, which is going to be probably the best matchup at the 4 o'clock slate. Battle of the 101 versus the 102, Jaden Daniels versus Caleb Williams. Tyreek Hill, despite missing some practices and being limited pretty much the whole week, he is expected to play. Zay Flowers, who's been a bit limited. I thought he had a high ankle sprain. I thought he was going to be F-City after last week, but he came back to play in that game, and he is expected to play today. Ladd McConkey, despite having a hip issue, is expected to play. Jacoby Myers, Deebo Samuel, they are all expected to play. Tua Tagovailoa is back, and it is awesome for fantasy football. A lot about his return when I get into the rankings portion of the show. Tajay Spears has been downgraded to out. So, again, another full lion's share for Tony Pollard, who's been pretty damn good in that role. Of course, he is a top 20 play. An interesting turn of events for tonight's game is Dalvin Cook was activated. Now, if this was 3 weeks ago, I would have told you that I don't give a rip. But after seeing what Kareem Hunt has done when he came off the couch for the Chiefs, you can't rule it out. If Dalvin Cook is available in your leagues and you have a spot for him to play, go ahead and pick him up. Jonathan Brooks will be out yet another week. It looks like we're going to have to keep waiting. And this week, head coach Dave Canales stated that there's a chance he doesn't play this year. There's a small chance that he never suits up for his rookie campaign in 2024. And for my seasonal format, guys, if there's any interest in selling Jonathan Brooks, just do it. Just get that mess off your team. Evan Ingram's going to play. DJ Shark is questionable, but we don't really care too much about DJ Shark. And last bit of news, it looks like Calvin Ridley was removed from the injury report, but I don't know how that's going to really look, folks. It hasn't been good for Calvin Ridley this season. Now there's no more DeAndre Hopkins, but there still is Mason Rudolph. So we will have to wait and see. I don't have him ranked all that high this week. I'm kind of tanked him in my ranks. It's just no thank you. No thank you when it comes to Calvin Ridley, which sucks. But wide receiver 62, not good. Not good. Let me see if I have any questions in the chat before we get into the rankings. No breakfast today, Matty. You got to hold it down for us. Hey, Fizz, you can watch and eat breakfast, dude. You can watch. You can chill, have coffee, eat a little brekkie. Let's do it. Cole World, half-point PPR. He needs 2. Dontavian Wicks, Tank Dell, or Rome Odunze, and then 1 of Jaden Reed, Amari, and Mooney. I wish you could take 3 from that last one because I would play Reed, Amari, and Mooney. But let's start there. Let's start with the big dogs. I like Mooney this week. He's a top 30 play, but I love me some Amari Cooper and Jaden Reed. I would go Reed slightly. I got him at wide receiver 13. And the 2 in the other department, you're definitely going to go Tank Dell and give me Roma Dunze. Hope for that post-buy jump from a rookie wide receiver playing with Caleb Williams. So I'm going to go with Roma Dunze and Tank Dell in that first set of questions. Standard PPFD points per first down. T. Higgins or Jalen Waddle? I'd go Waddle. I have T. Higgins ranked pretty high. I had him as a top 10 play, but the injury is going to cause me to bring him down after this episode, where Waddle is going to come up. Now that I know Tua Tagovailoa is playing, I always had him in the top 40. He'll be a top 20 play for me this week. So I'm going to go with Jalen Waddle because a quad can flare up, right? A quad injury can flare up during the game. And if that's going to happen, you lose out. I don't want that risk. And the alternative is not too risky with Jalen Waddle, so let's go with Jalen Waddle. DB, the only question I have this week, do the able gentlemen love what it takes to take down Double Tap in the South Harmon Staff League? Asking for a friend. Well, DB, the Staff League for me has been up and down. Double Tap has had its ups and its downs. We're just above 500. I'll tell you this. Sleeper doesn't have faith that Double Tap is going to take down the able gentleman. So we'll see, though. We'll have some trash talk in the Discord. PPR, Christian Watson, Ricky Pearsall, or Rashad Bateman. I'm going Ricky P. I liked what I saw out of Ricky P. They're going to need to turn to somebody with no Debo or limited Debo, no Ayuk. Kittle's banged up, and they spent a first-round pick on this kid. And I know he only had 5 targets, but he caught 3 of them, and I thought his ability to separate was apparent in just his first game out there. So I'm going to go with Pearsall and risk it with Ricky P. and hope that you take a shot on Ricky P. We're gonna take a shot on Ricky P. That's not tasteful. That's gross. But anyway, sit one. Brian Robinson, Amari Cooper, or Zay Flowers. 0.2 points per carry. I'm going to sit Brian Robinson against that Chicago Bears defense. It seems to me today he's going to need to have 2 touchdowns to really ascend. I got him as a top 24 running back, but Amari's a top 15. Zay Flowers is top 10. So I'm going to go with the 2 receivers here, despite having the 0.2 points per carry. Jaden or Caleb, assuming Jaden is cleared, I will have them ranked basically back-to-back. in my rankings. I have Caleb ranked at 8. As long as Jaden Daniels is healthy, he'll come in at 7. He'll come in one ahead of. Actually, no, he would not come in at 7. He would come in at 8, and then Caleb would move to 9. I would put him ahead, but I will say this: I'm not nervous about Jaden Daniels. I hate to see a guy leave early, say he's okay, but then it didn't seem like he was okay, and it's a rib injury. Another hit could hurt. So I'm going to go with Caleb just slightly because I don't have the injury risk, and of course the matchup is a hell of a lot better. Brian Thomas or Dobbins, full flex PPR. Give me BT. I got BT as a top 15 wide receiver. We're going to go Brian Thomas, James. Shout out to Brady in the chat. Thomas Edward Brady, what's up? Najee Harris, T. Higgins, Tank Bigsby. Got to pick one. Go with the Tank. Tank Bigsby. Brian Thomas or Terry Mack. You're going to go with Brian Thomas here. I love what Terry Mack has done. He's still a top 24 play for me, but Jalen Johnson is the opposing cornerback. That's a tough matchup for Terry McLaurin. And I just avoided the uncertainty. When you know Brian Thomas has been so good, and if you're really wondering how good Brian Thomas has been, stick around to this week in WoRP because I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive on Brian Thomas because that WoRP is bananas. BANANA. Yes. Yeah, Jalen Johnson against Terry Mack. It's going to be a tough one for him. Last one, and then we'll get into the rankings discussion. Breezy, shout to Breezy. Najee or Marvin Harrison Jr. For me, if it's full PPR, go Marvin. If it's half or less, I could go Najee. Najee has back-to-back 100-yard games. He has a pretty good matchup Sunday night or Monday Night Football against the Gigantes. But in terms of rankings, I got Marvin at 25 at wide receiver and Najee at running back 22, so it's pretty close. But if you want to talk about positional, which position has more value based on PPR or not, that's kind of where I would lean. Flowosaurus, thanks, Matty. No, thank you for tuning in, Flo. Christian Gardner, thank you for tuning in. Who's a few players you can see having a tough game that can open up nicely, a nice buy opportunity for next week? I think right now, looking at my ranks, kind of where you could find some value, I think you could find some value on a guy like a James Cook this week. Who could have a tough game and then bounce back because he's obviously had a pretty good season. So there might be a bit of a buying opportunity there. A player like, it's tough to say his name, but Michael Pittman, he could have another rough go this week against Derek Stingley against the Houston Texans, but he's really just a QB change away from being awesome. He's a QB change away from being awesome. That's just why I think there's a potential buying opportunity there. And then at tight end, Sam Laporta. I'm going to talk about Sam Laporta, but in a position that's completely rudderless, take a shot on talent, you might be able to buy here if he has another dud this game. So thanks for the question, Mr. Christian Gardner. A little nervous on that, but we all are a little nervous. I have Anthony Richardson, so I hope not. Hey, brother. Hey, it's okay. It's okay. We'll give you that good juju. We'll give you that good juju. Last question: Michael Pittman or Christian Watson? Give me Michael Pittman. Johnny Detroit. All right, let's get into some rankings talk. I have a few rankings per position that I want to dive into. We're going to start at quarterback, and we're going to start with Caleb Williams here. We're going to start with Caleb Williams. As I said, I have Caleb Williams as my number 8 quarterback. He could shift down one spot, but the reason I want to talk about Caleb is he's now gotten into my top 10 before the week, and with some easier matchups on the horizon, it gets real tough after the slew of next 3 games, but after that it gets tough. But he's gonna be a player that probably sits inside my top 10 weekly, and that's why I wanted to talk about him here today, because he's been really, really good this week or over the last few weeks. And this week, the matchup against the Commanders is the 8th most advantageous for quarterbacks. So he has an opportunity to really kind of take a stranglehold. And if you look at his breakdown game by game, the 2 duds, week 1 and week 2, after that is when him and other players went to Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator, and was like, and told him basically, like, let us cook, let the boys play, let the boy watch. And after that, we've seen a complete turnaround from Caleb Williams. QB 14, QB 22, QB 6, QB 1 week 6 before his bye, when he tore up the Jaguars for 4 touchdowns. Could have had a 5th if he did not, if DJ Moore got into the end zone. But why I wanted to really highlight Caleb Williams in my rankings this week at 8 is we can now be comfortable with the player that we probably took in 101 as Superflex, a first-round pick, even in 1 QB. We can now play him with confidence, I think. Of course, it's going to get bumpy here in about 3 weeks, but over this next slew of games, Caleb Williams is here to stay, and the reason being, he's running the ball, I think, a lot more than projected initially. 3 games so far this season of his 6, he's eclipsed 30 rushing yards in most formats. That's an extra 30. That's an extra 3 points. And then over his last 2, where he was a top 6 quarterback in each contest, we're talking about 90 total rushing yards. He's scooting after a 56 yards performance in London. It seems like his athleticism is translating. We didn't see it a lot at USC. We saw it, of course, as he scrambled. We saw it in his ability to keep the play going. But now we're seeing him take off downfield in a scramble, not as a runner, as a scrambler. And that's kind of, I think, what we were hoping from a Caleb Williams. That's what we were truly hoping to see from the first overall pick in this year's draft. And that's why, for me, I want to talk about him in my ranks, because he's a player now that I think has – it's not that he's arrived. It's kind of a lame thing to say when you say, oh, well, he's arrived now. It's not that he's arrived. It's that I think we can just feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that he can handle it. This offense is helping him, and Shane Waldron is not tanking him for the rest of his damn season. The next quarterback I needed to talk about was Jameis, because your boy was hungry, wanted to eat some dubs. But the reason why I wanted to bring up Jameis also, I don't have him ranked all that highly in my weekly ranks. He's QB 25 because we understand, we understand what Jameis can do. We understand that going against the Baltimore Ravens, he is a player that could throw a shitload of interceptions. But the reason why I wanted to talk about him is if you are down and out, if you're desperate for a streamer and he's available, he's potentially worth the risk. He does have upside. He has the upside this week. And the reason being is actually the matchup. The matchup seems scary because it's the Ravens, but the Ravens haven't really been good against opposing quarterbacks. The Ravens actually have given up 6 points over league average to quarterbacks, which is the second highest, making it a very advantageous matchup for opposing quarterbacks. And Jameis is going to come out slinging. He did last week in limited play. He came in the middle of the game, still threw for 67 yards, had a passing touchdown, finished his QB 24 last week. So without even knowing he was going to start, without playing the whole game, he still cracked the top 24, which is why I like Jameis Winston. And you know what? If you're in it for fun, if you like the fun aspect of fantasy and you need a vibes guy, you need a locker room guy, you need someone to get the squad chirping and ready to rock, and you have that extra bench space, throw Jameis Williams on there. Jameis Winston is that guy. Jameis Winston is a guy that can get the vibes up. He's just a vibes guy. You got to love it. The next guy I want to talk about is Devon Achane. So Achane is a running back that obviously had massive games to start. Coming out of the gate, we saw 23 fantasy points, 29.5 fantasy points, and then he kind of faded away. Running back 33, 44, 53, 25. So it's like he's not good, right? Or something happened in his offense. What? Let me take a sip of coffee. Maybe it'll jog my memory. Delicious. Something happened with this offense. Oh, yeah. Tua Tagovailoa went out. He was not there. Guess who's back this week? It's Tua. And the reason why Achane has shot all the way back up, he's my running back 7 this week. And we're starting with confidence. Even though the matchup isn't great, the Cardinals have actually really been the 23rd best matchup for running back. So it hasn't been great, but they've given up points. It's just that they ran into a couple of dud games. That just the running backs didn't perform on the team. That can kind of happen. But then when you look a little deeper, you realize they're actually a lot worse at covering receiving running backs. And the reason why Achane is now back into my top 10 was when Tua was the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins, 14 targets, 14 catches in the first 2 games. He caught 7 balls in each of the first 2 games. He was being used as the slot guy. And I'm not saying that comes back full this week, but I'm also not saying that comes back wholeheartedly this week. And Achane, despite the drops in terms of not the drops, the drop in value, the drop in production. He's still a top 50 WoRP player overall. This is a guy that when his quarterback's healthy, he has a chance to be a top 15 overall WoRP guy. He could be a difference maker. So don't worry, put him back in your lineups. It's good to go. The analytical profile is there. We always knew he was efficient, but now we can get a lot more excited. And if you were able to withstand, if you were able to still be standing and weather the storm that was missing Tua Tagovailoa. See how sometimes you just catch that group? Then you can put him back in your lineup and be very, very excited that Tua is back. The next running back I want to talk about in my rankings is Tyler Algier. Tyler Algier at running back 27. The matchup's great for running backs. It's great. And, of course, Bijan's there. So it's not like I can make him a top 20 guy because Bijan's there. And Bijan's sitting comfortably at the top of my ranks. He's my running back too. He's been breaking out. The matchup's great. It's the 12th most advantageous on the ground, but they also have Tampa Bay has given up a ton of passing production to opposing running backs. And we've seen Tyler Algier not really get the volume, but we have seen him be able to make plays with what he's got, including in the screen game, which could be a point of attack for the Falcons this week. We've seen a game where he's gotten 3 targets, but we've also now seen over the course of the season, he's scoring double-digit fantasy points about a third of the time. He's hovering around over 7.5 fantasy points half of the time. He has a top 11 finish this season. That was when they absolutely destroyed Carolina 2 weeks ago, where he got 18 carries. The truth of the matter is Tyler Algier is pretty good at football. He's got a good juke rate. He's very explosive. He's good at creating breakaway runs. He's good at creating on a per-touch basis. You take all these factors in, I'm just no longer going to completely fade Tyler Algier. Of course, I'm not going to prop him up with Bijan there because Bijan's the GOAT at running back right now. He's just awesome. I shouldn't have done that. I don't like using GOAT so flippantly. But he's been great. So Tyler Algier's been good. So Tyler Algier, if you could buy him in the low, if he's a free agent, throw him on the back of your lineup, because if something happens to Bijan, and we're hoping not, no, we don't want anything to happen to Bijan, but if something happens to Bijan, Tyler Algier is going to be a league winner. The analytics are there. It supports a very good football player, and at the end of the day, that's what we want. That's what we need when we're trying to win these very, very important games here in the middle of the season. Before I get into wide receiver, let's get into the comments. Let's see what we got. If we got any questions to answer, and we do. South Scout, what up? 650. Half point PPR, need one flex, JSN, Mooney, Hopkins, or Worthy. I'm going to go with JSN, Jackson, Smith, and Jigba. And if you stick around for a few minutes, I will get more into that player when I talk about my rankings. Dirty Bird is in the house. Shout out, Dirty Bird. Oh, I'm not good as in the biz. Good morning. What is up, Jake? What's up, Fizzle? Jake, this isn't even Fizzle's show. So what's up to me? I'm just kidding. What's up, Fizzle? Dirty Bird. Matty's injuries have killed me. Need to start one in PPR. Dearness Johnson, Pierre Strong, Alec Pierce, Nick Westbrook, Akine. It's gross out here. Go with Dearness Johnson. The reason being, we saw pretty good volume last week when they took on the New England Patriots in a game where they had to kind of come back and then they were able to kind of coast. It was weird, but we kind of saw both game scripts. But last week with Travis Etienne out against the New England Patriots, Dearness Johnson carried the ball 9 times. He ran 5 routes, got 4 targets, caught 3 of them for 70 yards. He had 10 fantasy points. He was running back 27 on the week. And that's a low volume. I would imagine that the game script is going to call for him to be on the field in that pass catching capacity like we saw a little bit in London last week, because they go against Green Bay Packers. And this is a game in which there's a lot of points projected to be scored. They're 4-point underdogs, and it's a good matchup for running backs. Packers are 8th most advantageous matchup for running backs, and they're the 7th most advantageous matchup for pass catching running backs. So I'm going to go with Dearness Johnson there. DJ Moore, Rashad White, or JT. Got to pick 2. I'm going DJ Moore, and I'm going JT. JT, I'm putting right back up in my ranks. He's running back 10 with, of course, higher upside. And then DJ Moore, I got him at wide receiver 11. The last time that he faced the Washington Commanders was that Thursday night bonanza where he had 9 catches, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, where he went absolutely berserko mode. And this is a matchup that he can absolutely exploit. Really thinking Kraft over McBride this week. Should I pull the trigger? No. You're gonna go McBride. I got McBride at 4, Kraft at 9. I'm gonna go McBride. Start 2 half-point PPR. DJM, Diggs, or Brian Thomas. Humble brag in the house. Rankings wise, I got DJ Moore and Diggs. I'm gonna go DJ Moore and Diggs here. Eli, the fantasy guy, shout out Eli. Matt, I need your opinion. Due to injury, I'm deciding between Daniel Jones, Swift, or Rachaad White, my super flex spot. Full point PPR. I'm actually going to go with Swift. I'm going to do the thing where you don't play the quarterback. Pittsburgh's been a tough matchup for quarterbacks. I got Daniel Jones at QB 26, where I have DeAndre Swift at running back 14. He's been efficient. He's been effective. He's gotten the volume, and he has a good matchup. So I know it sometimes feel yucky not playing the quarterback when you got one. But here, I think this is one of those times where you go ahead and play DeAndre Swift. Pickens or Garrett Wilson this week. I got Pickens at 12, Garrett Wilson at 19. The volume was there in terms of targets, but I think we can lower target share down. 9 targets a game. He only caught 5 of them. It wasn't as efficient. Pickens looked fantastic with Russell Wilson. That rainbow ball, it was like it was in the air for 45 seconds. And I'm watching that game like, oh, wow, it's flying. And he caught it. George Pickens and Russell Wilson. I'm hoping we see that again this week, Landry, but I'm going to play him. I got Pickens at 12. I like Pickens this week, so you can't help it. Last question. We got 2 more questions, and then we'll get into the last part of the rankings, and then we'll go through this week in WoRP. We'll get the Kiwoom call, and we'll get you guys out of here and ready to rock to get those questions ready for my guys at noon here on the channel for start or shit. PPR risk level with Debo this week or play it safe with Mooney. I would go with Mooney. So rankings speak-wise, I got Debo higher, but I got him at 17, and the reason why he's that low is the risk, the nervousness that he's just not there. I mean, he had pneumonia. He was hospitalized with pneumonia-like symptoms. Like, he definitely lost weight, definitely probably lost energy, probably has a little added fatigue. And the thing about Debo, he's just such a tank. So I would go Mooney because I got Mooney at 26. So it's about 10 spots different in my wide receiver ranks, but I kind of like the safety here. Now, your matchup might dictate this. If you need the upside where you can't handle a dud, then maybe you go the safety of a Debo. But if you just kind of want to get the most upside, maybe Mooney's the play. I'm going to go with Mooney here and avert some of the risk, but I'm going to usually play a little risk avert type guy. Anthony Richardson or Justin Herbert. I'm still going Richardson. I got Richardson at 11. The matchup's so good. And even if it's in comeback mode, even if he puts on his Blake Bortles costume for Halloween this game, we'll take it. He's got the abilities and the athleticism to become a top 5 guy in a given week, even if the Texans kick the shit out of the Colts. We don't need that. And Justin Herbert, the truth is, he's just not fantasy exciting. The Chargers are going to win. They were more than happy to win that game on Monday night with 5 field goals. They ended up losing because they couldn't put the ball in the fucking end zone. But Harbaugh, Herbert, they don't need to go crazy. I'm going to go with Richardson with the upside. Pick 2, Pollard, Rachaad White, J.K. Dobbins. I got it at Dobbins at 11, Pollard at 17, Rachaad White at 29. So give me Pollard and J.K. Dobbins. All right, let's keep talking about these rankings here. Now we're going to talk about some receivers, and this one's pretty self-explanatory. It's Tyreek Hill. I got him at receiver 5 this week, but the only reason he's at 5 is because of the limited practices. If he had been practicing in a full capacity all week, he was actually initially my wide receiver 1 for the week. I'm expecting a big week from Tyreek Hill. The Arizona Cardinals is the 8th most advantageous matchup for opposing wide receivers. And he's projected to go up against rookie Max Melton or second-year cornerback Max Melton. Either way, he's a fast player, but he ain't Tyreek fast. And we've just seen so many big games with Tua and Tyreek. I'm just not in the business of fading it, especially going back to week 1, 12 targets, 7 catches, 130 total, or 130 receiving yards, 1 TD. He was wide receiver 4. And we saw the glowingness. We heard how excited he is to be playing with his quarterback. Again, he used the term beautiful, and that touches my heart. That makes me feel so good. So Tyreek Hill, if you've been nervous about Tyreek Hill, the nerves shall be gone. This is the week. I thought it would be last week. I thought after the bye, we would have saw something kind of dialed in. Oh, my God, look at my head. We would have saw something a little more dialed in for him. We didn't, but now Tua's back. It's going to be great. And if you're interested in using some of the betting tools to kind of help with our decisions in football and fantasy football, DraftKings has Tyreek Hill as one of the most owned receivers on the slate in FanDuel as well. So the projected ownership stakes for those players are high because the advantage is going to be there for the wide receiver who gets his quarterback back. Now, I asked in the chat here to stick around because I had a little bit more to talk about in regards to oh man, I totally forgot to do something. This is why I had to this. We'll get it going. I had my rankings at the bottom. One day I'll wake up. Anyway, I want to talk about JSN. I want to talk about Jackson Smith and Jigba. No, it looks like DK's out this week. And what is that going to mean? I think we're going to see a game that we're going to 8 targets, 9 targets, 10 targets on the table. We've now seen JSN have a game of 16 targets, 12 targets, 7 and 9 with DK on the field. DK is not going to be on the field. And now the matchup this week, the matchup's not great when you look at Buffalo, but the over-under looks like there'll be some points. And we've seen now the Seattle Seahawks prove to be a really good offense with Ryan Grubbs. The pacing, the way he kind of attacks and messes with opposing teams' timing is really special. And JSN's been a big factor in that, even though we haven't necessarily seen it in terms of our production on a weekly basis. But this is a player that has upside. We've been waiting for this upside. And despite really not exciting people, I would say, in fantasy, he's still a top 65 player in WoRP. He's not easily replaced. He's been as valuable as players like Darnell Mooney, who people have been pretty excited about. Players like Romeo Dubes, who just come off a big game. He's as valuable as J.K. Dobbins. Different position, but still, he's proving to be quite valuable. And now without DK, some of those deeper targets should open up for a guy that just hasn't seen him. I mean, he's 34th amongst the receivers in deep targets. His ADOT is 80th. He's 61st in air yard share for the Seahawks. He's just not going deep. He's not attacking downfield. So the hope is today with DK out, he gets a little bit more of that role. That's why I got him at wide receiver 21. He does have a little bit of risk there. I think conservatively I could have put him closer to wide receiver 30, but I'm excited to see JSN get this opportunity without DK Metcalf. And yeah, I know Taron Johnson's a good slot corner, but they can move JSN all over the place now. He's not going to be kind of restricted to that slot role. We've seen him, lead the league in slot snaps. I think today is a good day that they can kind of mix and match and attack downfield with a player that showed in college and has shown at times throughout his short career that he can make plays downfield. He can do things a little bit more dynamically than they're using him. So I got him at wide receiver 21. He's someone I got my eyes on, so I'm very excited to kind of see how it plays out. Now let's get into the tight end position, and let's start with David Njoku. David Njoku for me is a tight end 2 on the week. Tight end 2. It's just hard to fade David Njoku. Since he kind of got things rolling at the end of last year, he just really hasn't been able to be stopped other than injuries, which has been tough. But coming back, he immediately saw 21 routes. But then we saw his snap share against Philly go up to 75%. We had 5 receptions, 31 yards. And then it all came together. It seemed like the health, the opportunity, and the scheme all came together last week against the Bengals, where he was on the field for over 80% of the time, ran 41 routes, which was a season high, 14 targets, caught 10 of them for 76 yards and a touchdown. He was tight end 1 last week. And now Amari Cooper is no longer in town, and we don't know how this pass catching hierarchy will go down with Judy and Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman, who emerged last week. And now we got Ken Dorsey calling the plays. Ken Dorsey, if he wants to be successful at calling the plays, is probably going to orchestrate a lot of touches to his most effective, most dynamic playmaker in the passing game, and that's David Njoku. Despite only scoring 10.6 fantasy points per game, his X fantasy points per game is 14.4. So there's been some meat left on the bones. He's been dominant at tight end. He's been pretty sure-handed this season. And now I think we see this target share, this target rate kind of actualize into actual targets and catches. We've seen it be good, a target rate of 29.3, but with the injuries, coming back, being a little slow, being rolled back out after coming back from the knee injury, this is now where we'll see David Njoku take off. So I got him at tight end 2 this week. And the other tight end that I'd like to talk about is Jatavian Sanders. Jatavian Sanders was widely regarded the second best tight end in this class, behind, obviously, Brock Bowers. He faded. Ben Sinnott was taken ahead of him. But now what we've kind of see is a quiet ascension for Jatavian Sanders. And over the last 2 weeks, we've seen him get 7 and 6 targets. He caught 5 and 6 of them. So that's 13 targets. He's caught 11 of them for over 100 yards. And now he has over 20 fantasy points total over these last 2 weeks. Tight end 14, tight end 12 last week against Washington, where he had 6 targets, caught 6 of them for 61 yards. And Bryce Young is, I mean, he's on the thumbnail for being a bust for a reason. I didn't rank him highly, but if he's going to have success, he's going to have to get the ball out quickly against this horrific Denver defense. Denver is going to cause so many problems for Bryce Young in the pocket. He's going to have to get rid of the football quick. No Deontay Johnson, no Adam Thielen. Kind of looks like Jatavian Sanders is going to be the guy today. Xavier Legette will be playing. Jonathan Mingo will be playing. Jalen Coker is a good, what the hell flex type play at the end there if you need some a deep threat. But you look at the cornerbacks for the Denver Broncos. I don't want to be disrespectful here, but it doesn't seem like they're going to have a tough time today covering who they have to cover. Again, the professional football players, they all get paychecks, but it seems like Denver Broncos secondary is not going to have a whole lot of trouble stopping the wide receivers of the Carolina Panthers today, which opens things up for Jatavian Sanders, who we've now seen get in the play, get to play more, get targeted more. And at the end of the day, this is a kid who's supremely talented. This is a guy who, like I said, was a yak monster at Texas his last 2 years there, back-to-back 600-yard receiving seasons there for Texas. And I am conservative with my ranking of Sanders. I have him at 19. But that's really a circumstantial type thing with all the injuries in the defense. Could I see Jatavian Sanders outscoring Hunter Henry, Pat Freiermuth? Yeah, I definitely could. Could I see him being a top 12 play this week? Yeah, I could. Absolutely. So Jatavian Sanders is something I just wanted to bring up and just put on people's radar that if you have tight end premium or if you've just been streaming the position and it's just kind of it's been running away from you over and over and over and over throughout the season, put this guy on your bench. This guy's kind of quietly becoming something in fantasy. And for me, I wanted to bring him up because he's top 20 this week, but he could be top 15 next. He's on that type of trajectory. All right, so I do have some WoRP takes that I want to get into, but first let's check the chat. Let's make sure that these questions are being answered, making sure that we are game planning for Week 8 win. We already did this one. Here we go. One more. Romeo Dubes or Xavier Worthy. I got them in the same bucket. They're in the – I'm not going to fade them because they can always take it to the hizzy on one play. I got Dubes at 35, Worthy at 36. It's a toss-up. So if you want to go by my ranks, it's Dubes. But if you want to go with the gut, play Worthy because my Kiwoom call of the week, stick around for that, is pushing me to want to play Worthy today. A-Chain or Walker today. Damn, go Rigs, damn. Humble brag. I got Kenneth Walker at 3, A-Chain at 7. So if you have a gut feeling, go with it. But if it's me, I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker. Walker's been so freaking good. Kenneth Walker's been awesome. Any more questions? A-Chain, Neighbors, or Olave in a different league? Got to pick one. I got A-Chain at 7. Malik Neighbors at wide receiver 7. But I'm going to go with A-Chain. Full point PPR. I'm going to go with A-Chain there. Believe it or not, I'm going to go with A-Chain. Which one do I start at half point PPR? Brian Robinson, Rashad White, or Debo? Brian Robinson. Go with Brian Robinson. If it was full point PPR, I'd probably say Rashad, but I'm going to go with Brian Robinson. And first of all, shout out to everyone in the chat. You guys are the absolute best. You're the reason why I love doing this every single week. Also, leave in the comments. Did you like this 10 o'clock start? It was a mistake, but I ran with it. Maybe 9 o'clock's a little too early. Maybe 10 o'clock's a little bit better. It closes that gap between now and start of shit. Let me know if you like it. Let me know if you like the 10 o'clock start, and we'll run that back next week as well. Pitts or Andrews? I got Andrews. I have never faded off Andrews, and now we've seen the touchdowns coming. We've seen the production following. I got him as a top 10 play. Pitts is tight end 10. I got Andrews at tight end 7, so I'm going to go with Andrews. Kyler or Geno to start. This is a lot closer this week than it has in most weeks, but I am going to go Kyler, whether it be in a shootout type thing or a comeback type thing, whatever it ends up being with Kyler. I'm just not going to fade him too heavily. This is probably the lowest I've had him in a while at QB 12. Still going to go with Kyler over Geno Smith this game. Mostert or Warren? Let me check my ranks here because it's probably going to be back-to-back. 33 for Mostert, 36 for Jalen Warren. Give me Raheem Mostert, but you got to make sure that Warren's available, folks. I mean, he's on a team. If he's been cut for dead in your league, your season league, put him on your roster because we're seeing him get production. Of Najee's been great over the last 2 weeks. He's kind of been that grinder, that player that I saw happening at the beginning of the year. But if something happens to him, Jalen Warren's looking healthier and healthier and healthier. So you got to make sure he's rostered. PPR, Mahomes or Burrow. Looks like Higgins could be out. Higgins definitely going to be haltered. I got Burrow at 6, Mahomes at 7. I'm actually going to make that change live here on the show because my Kiwoom call revolves around Patrick Mahomes. And so I got to make sure that he is up in my ranks now. It's going to be a bold call, which means I'll go into that when it's the Kiwoom call of the week. But yeah, we're going to go with Mahomes over Burrow. 10 feels good, my East Coast brother. Yes. Okay. Yes. Hey, leave in the chat. If you guys like 10, we'll absolutely go 10 going on. 10 this week, earlier, London weeks. That's definitely something we can talk about. Make sure you leave in the comment. Not in the live chat. Leave it in the comments. Was 10 o'clock a good start for you? Dobbins, Amari Cooper, or Brian Robinson? Give me Amari Cooper, baby. I think we see a big game from Amari. 1 target, 1 catch, 1 touchdown in his debut last week. Ended up with 16 fantasy points coming off of the game. And it's apparent the difference that professional can make in an offense, even with no time. And he's got a full week of work with Josh Allen. I love Amari Cooper this week and every week going forward, to be honest. We giving A-Rich a shot over Caleb, or is that silly thinking? I'm going Caleb. I've bought into Caleb. I talked a lot about Caleb earlier in the show, so I'm definitely going to go with Caleb. All right, now let's move on to the section that I really wanted to talk about a ton, because WoRP wins over replacement is the best statistical tool that you can use in fantasy football. Point blank period. There are a lot out there that imitate, but there's none that duplicate. This is the first. This is the best wins over replacement play. You can find it at southharmonff.com. Go check that out. You can get a free version, but I highly recommend you subscribe to the deluxe version, the premium version of WoRP, where you can really dive into it and utilize the best tool in fantasy football. So if you want to take your game to the next level, and you might be looking at teams fighting for the playoffs and teams that are going to make the playoffs. Doesn't matter if it's dynasty, seasonal, best ball, it doesn't matter because it's league specific. You can get the actual numbers that are relative to your league. This is a quantifiable value structure that transcends positions. You can finally see what does wide receiver 7 mean in relative to running back 13, and so on and so forth. And that's why this week I had to talk about 3 players according to WoRP. So WoRP, real quick, put a pin in it, wins over replacement. You can get it at southharmonff.com. If you want to learn a little bit more about WoRP, come back for Start or Shit at noon. Cooper Troopers on with Eric and T-Rock, and he's going to do a quick update. I don't know exactly the format of how he's going to do it, but he's going to talk about WoRP in relative to this season, relative how to use it, and then it's off to the races. So make sure you go to southharmonff.com, get that WoRP tool, baby. All right, first take that I've decided to talk about after looking at the WoRP is losing Chris Godwin is gonna fucking suck. Chris Godwin was so good, and yeah, you can look at his fantasy production. Yeah, you can understand it because he's been dominant, winning weeks for players. And, it's not just the fact that he's wide receiver 5 on a points per game basis. It's not the fact that he had 576 receiving yards. It's not the fact that he was the best yak receiver in football. When you look at the WoRP tool, it completely supports all the production that we were seeing in fantasy. Chris Godwin was the second most valuable player in fantasy football in our 1QB leagues. Let me say that again. He was the second most valuable player overall in fantasy football throughout the season. Only Derrick Henry has provided more value above replacement than Chris Godwin. And now, I don't know if you can hear my kids running around upstairs up there or not, but they are absolutely running the Oklahoma drill upstairs. Losing Chris Godwin, there is no replacing Chris Godwin. If you need some inspiration on how to go about replacing Chris Godwin, watch Moneyball. Watch it and watch how they talk about replacing him in the aggregate, because you're going to have to replace him in the aggregate. There will not be a one-for-one replacement. In Dynasty, you could flip him for a, kind of exploit the injury, but you're going to take a hit on the value. There's no way you're flipping him for a top 5 wide receiver. You're certainly not going to get a top 2 player in terms of value for fantasy football. So I know a lot of us have been dealing with the Godwin injury and trying to cope with the Godwin injury, but this is going to sting. And if you had Chris Godwin and you were a contender, you got to get to work. You got to tune in to the Dynasty Trade Show each weekend. You got to tune into the game plan. You got to listen to the podcast. Got to listen to America's Game, Grinding the Edge. You got to rock with us in South Harmon. You got to get all this information. And, you get it from other places or fantastic content creators everywhere. But you got to do the work. You got to grind, because replacing Chris Godwin, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to come easy. And if you were winning because you had Chris Godwin, you need to be ready for some speed bumps, because he has been so good and so valuable for fantasy football. And it's going to be hard, but I'm not here to say I'm not going to be all doom and gloom. You can do it, folks. If you lost them, you can do it. You can do it. But it's going to be tough. The next take that I kind of formulated after looking at the week 8 WoRP, Brian Thomas is for real. Brian Thomas is for real. Brian Thomas is a lot better earlier than I thought he'd be. I like the talent coming out of college. He was my wide receiver 5 after the big 3 in Worthy, but I did not think he would be this valuable this quick. Brian Thomas right now has an 8.17 WoRP in 1QB leagues. That's almost 1.2 WoRP per game. He's wide receiver 10 and the 23rd overall most valuable player in fantasy right now. And he's doing it in what not exactly how we thought he would. Admittedly, I thought if he was going to be this good, it would be because he was converting on deep target. And yeah, he has converted deep, but his ADOT is outside of the top 25. His air yard share is outside of the top 25. He's outside of the top 10 in air yards overall. He's outside of the top 10 in deep targets. He's really just being a dog. We're looking at his yards after catch. He's 9th, 191 yards after catch. Fantastic. 2.7 yards per route run, 6th amongst qualified wide receivers. His formation adjusted yards per route run is 2.33. That's 8th amongst all wide receivers that qualify. And he's been separating. His target separation metrics are good. Even though he's dropping the football, we all know that's a Fagay stat. Who cares? You can still dominate and drop the football. But he's winning. He's winning his routes. His route win rate is good. His routes versus man is high. He's been a better overall receiver earlier than I expected. And when you look at the WoRP, that completely backs it up. He's been more valuable than Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf. He's been more valuable than CeeDee Lamb. so far this season, he's been awesome. And if you draft him in your rookie drafts for Dynasty, or if you took him late in seasonal drafts, keep riding it to the bank. He's been awesome. He is not a sell. He is not someone that you should try to clip some value off the top. He's somebody that has been really good in the WoRP. Absolutely supports how good he's been. So WoRP has led me down 3 paths that I'm going to talk about today. 1 positive, 2 negative. I'm sorry, but it's negative because the next thing I need to talk about is Sam Laporta has been as useful as tits on a bull. And for people who aren't country out there, that means he's been useless. Tits on a bull does nothing. You can't get milk from him. I got nipples, Greg. Can you milk me? No, that's just sorry. But Sam Laporta has been useless in fantasy football. And I know that sounds harsh, but when you look at his wins over replacement and see what players he's kind of listed around, you'll realize how useless he's been in fantasy football. He's the 93rd overall player. 93rd overall player. He's barely inside the top 100 in terms of his value. He's tight end 11 in WoRP. His WoRP is under 0.4. It's 3.57. Not good. He's been as valuable as players like Dallas Goedert, who has missed most of the season. He's been as valuable as Jerome Ford, who's been a dud. Alexander Madison, who wasn't even drafted in our seasonal formats. He's not as valuable as Dalton Kincaid, who's been kind of terrible. He's been as valuable as Tyrone Tracy, who has only had 2 opportunities. Kareem Hunt, who was signed off the couch 2 weeks ago. It does not look good for Sam Laporta. I was fading him coming into the year because it just I didn't think he was so tight, the touchdown dependent. But man, it's looked bad. It's been tough. And over the last 2 weeks, yeah, he was a top 10 tight end in week 6 against Cowboys, but it took a trick play and he got 1 target and it was on that trick play and he caught it for a 52-yard touchdown. And that just shows how shitty the tight end position is. That was 9th on the week with 12.2 fantasy points. But then last week he comes out in a game that, Goff was able to pass the ball. Amon-Ra went crazy. Khalif Raymond had a touchdown. It wasn't like it was this 10-7 finish. No, there was a lot of points scored. There was a lot of offensive plays, and Goff threw the ball well. And believe me, Goff is throwing darts out there, and he looks fantastic. Sam Laporta is just not getting any love. He has yet to have a game this year where he's eclipsed more than 5 targets. That was week 1. Since then, 3, 2, 4, 1, and 2 last week. He doesn't have a 5-catch game on the season. He doesn't have a 60-yard game on the season. He's running a lot of routes. He's on the field a ton. He's just not being used as a playmaker. In the analytical profile, there's nothing really in it that suggests that there's a quick and imminent turnaround. He's getting good targets. He's not really dominant. He's been explosive. That's just relative to the plays that he's making. He's not getting a lot of chance to make them. And if he gets more volume, those explosive plays will come down. But his air yard share is terrible. His ADOT is bad. He's only seen 2 red zone targets. He's been decent yards after catch, but again, the volume isn't there. And I don't know if it's going to come in spades. What we're seeing is the Detroit Lions understanding that they are one of the best teams in football and that they will be a contender as long as they just pound the rock with their 2 talented running backs and their ungodly, otherworldly offensive line. And so far, Sam Laporta has kind of been part of that offensive line. He's been blocking, he's been helping out. And, the expected fantasy points isn't there. There's just not a lot there. He's just been so useless. Like I said, 93rd overall player in WoRP. Not good. And if you're able to tier down, whether it be Dynasty or seasonal, I would highly recommend doing that. If you can sell your Sam Laporta and get into another tight end, basically, looking at my ranks this week, like, take your Sam Laporta, trade him for Pat Frymuth plus, trade him for Zach Ertz plus, trade him for Hunter Henry. It just feels like, to me, at this point, and Coop will probably talk about it on the Starter Shit Show, how relatively pointless tight end has been this year, but Sam Laporta is a big reason for that. And it was clear when you look at the WoRP charts. Clear, and it was not great to see. All right, before we get into the Kiwoom call of the week, let's get back into the chat, baby. Let's see where we're at. Let's see where we left off. Josh Allen plus Amari or Kyler plus Marv in Dynasty. you got to go Kyler and Marv because we don't know if Amari will even be there next year. But if you're going, shotgun wedding, if you're expediting, you're trying to win that ship this year, Josh Allen and Amari are going to be fucking dirty. They're going to be awesome this year. But in Dynasty, you got to go Kyler and Marv. The age, the upside, it's all there. Everything's there. Start Roschon Johnson or D'Ernest Johnson. I'm going to go with Roschon here. D'Ernest, it was pretty good last week, but we've now seen Roschon continuously be involved to albeit in a limited capacity, but we've seen him get the goal line touches. We've seen him play some third down, some 2-minute drill stuff. And if this, coming out of the bye, if they want to make that split a little bit more even to keep DeAndre Swift fresh, I think we see Roschon Johnson get double-digit points this week. So I think the ceiling of D'Ernest Johnson might be double digits. I think the median, not necessarily the floor for Roschon is 10, but I think it's pretty good likelihood we see double-digit points. So let's go Roschon. Worthy or McKillen, PPR. Jalen McMillan, I have at 38, Worthy at 36, so it's relatively close. But again, I'm just siding with Worthy, and it's a lot is based on my Kiwoom called week. Sterling Shepard today, question mark. I got him as a top 50 play. I got him ahead of names like Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, Michael Wilson. So that's about where I think he's a good play. Rico Dowdle or Ramondre Stevenson. Don't like either this week, but I am going to go Dowdle ever so slightly on Sunday Night Football. Give me that final phase, baby. Lad McConkey or Rashad Bateman in PPR. Give me Lad McConkey. I got him as a top 30 play. I think he has been the most volume-inducing receiver in that passing game. So let's go with Lad McConkey, even with the hip injury. Pitts or Andrews, I think we answered that earlier, but we're going to go Andrews. Jaden Daniels or Winston this week. We're going to go Jaden. We're going to go Jaden. I'm not going to get that crazy, fans, but I do like Winston in a pinch. DJ Moore, Brian Thomas, or Marvin Harrison. One for the flex. I got DJ Moore. I got DJ Moore as a top 11 play. I do like Brian Thomas at 14. So if something in your gut is telling you to play Thomas, go with it. But my rankings have DJ just 3 spots higher. He killed this team last year. If T. Higgins doesn't play, should I flex instead? Ricky Pearsall, Tyrone Tracy, Bucky Irving, Wicks, or Odunze? I'm not playing Bucky Irving. I thought he wasn't even going to play, and now he's playing with that toe injury. It seems like he could easily be third fiddle in that running back room, so I'm not really excited about that. Wicks, he's a touchdown-dependent guy with everyone healthy, so I'm not really looking for that. Tracy, it looks as long as Devin Singletary's there, it's going to be a pain in the ass for both of them, so I'm not really excited to go that route. For me, it comes down to Ricky P taking a shot on Ricky P or going with Rome Odunze. I do have Ricky P higher at 32, Rome Odunze at 37. So let's go with Ricky Pearsall. Take that shot on Ricky Pearsall. All right, here it is, Kiwoom call of the week, and then I'll let you go for week 8 foosball. My Kiwoom call of the week, and this week it's a little bit bold. So typically how these calls will go is something I believe in, you'll see it in my rankings, or something that is a little bit bold, which doesn't necessarily be reflected in my rankings. So don't hold my calls against the rankings. Sometimes I want to get bold. Sometimes I want to yell from the rooftop about my rankings. This week, it's really trying to get bold because I have Pat Mahomes at QB6, but if this Kiwoom call comes correct, he's a lot better than that, but it's a little bit bold take. But I have Patrick Mahomes throws for 300-plus yards and 3 or more touchdowns against the Vegas Raiders. Now, the Raiders haven't really been a Swiss cheese secondary this year. They haven't really been easy for opposing quarterbacks, but we got the Kermit the Frog incident, folks. Over training camp in the summer, some of the Raiders picked up a Kermit the Frog puppet, and they had the hair on it, and they were during the voice, and they called him a bitch. So I'm a bitch. And they're all laughing, making fun of it. And Patrick Mahomes said it'll get handled when it gets handled. Awesome bar, awesome comment from an awesome player. These guys are different. These guys can turn it on to 11 and cook in their games. These greatest of all time conversation type players. Mahomes is that type of guy. Mahomes is absolutely that type of guy that can shred a defense just because he surely wants to kill them. And on top of that, the Raiders, their scheme, they run a lot of man coverage on their defense, and Mahomes has actually been very efficient delivering against coverage schemes of like man coverage schemes this year. He's actually been the 5th most efficient against man coverage. The Raiders deploy a lot of man coverage, so there's a bit of an opportunity there for for Mahomes to absolutely come in and thrash this Raiders team. And another fun fact about Patrick Mahomes is he hasn't been top 10 in fantasy in a week. So he hasn't finished as a top 10 quarterback in fantasy football since last year when he took on the Vegas Raiders. Okay. He has not been a weekly top 10 quarterback in fantasy since he took on the Raiders last November 26, 2023. So 11 straight games of not being top 10, but that changes today because my Kiwoom call of the week, Patrick Mahomes throws for 300 plus yards and throws for 3 or more touchdowns. That's it. That's the show. Oh, we got a couple more questions. You can't leave. That's part of the rules here. Cody taught me this. You cannot leave any questions. Good morning. Sutton, Douglas, or McConkey. Go with McConkey. Adunze or McConkey on the snow plane. Let's go with Adunze. Let's go with Adunze there. Appreciate you, friends. Guys, thank you so much for tapping it in. The Harry Snowman, John, Chef, Dynasty Barry, friends, I see in the Saucy's in there. Of course, Fizzle Dollars. Thank you for checking it out. Thank you for rocking with us. Sven Goat Rings is in the house. Cole's in the house. Black Rain in the house. Thank you, everyone that's tuned in, tapped in, everyone checking us out, everyone hanging out on 10 a.m. And make sure in the comments you leave. Did you like the 10 a.m. start? Make sure you go ahead and leave it in the comments so I know. Should I start at 10 or go back to 9? Like this video. Let's crush the like button. Let's get it going. Leave a comment, like I said, and make sure you subscribe to South Harmon FF on YouTube. Head over to southharmonff.com. Get that WoRP Tool. Get that rankings. Join the community. Let's get it done. Tank Bigsby and Evan Ingram. Full point PPR. Go with Bigsby. Dowdle or Ramondre. We're going with Dowdle. T-Rock says it best. Hit them likes, people. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for rocking with me. I'm Matty Kiwoom. Let's keep game planning, my friends, and I will see you next Sunday. What time? Leave in the comments. Let me know. Peace.